Hi everyone, and welcome to this quick tutorial on how to make a twisted effect turban style headband. And as you can see, I've made one here to show you, and I'm just going to bring it closer to the camera, and you can see that this has got a lovely twisted effect at the front. But if I was to turn this around the back, you can see that there's also this elasticated piece at the back of the headband, and that just means that this piece is going to be totally adjustable and comfortable to wear because it's going to fit all head sizes because of the elastic backing. So again, this is just the front, just to show you, and I'm going to talk you through what it is you need to make this piece. So I'm going to be explaining the materials required, and I'm also going to explain the sizes you need to cut your fabric, so that we can move on to the next step. You're going to need to cut 4 pieces of non-stretch fabric. So, you could use an old dress or an old garment you have at home, but if you can get 4 matching pieces out of it, cut to the exact dimensions, that's what we need for today's tutorial. So I went ahead and splashed out and bought some really nice fabric for this tutorial. And the measurements for this are 20 inches in length by 8 inches in width. So you're going to need 4 pieces of those, as I said, in non-stretch fabric. So I've already gone ahead and cut my pieces out, which you can see here. So they're all the same. So you just need to get yourself a measuring tape, a ruler, good scissors, good fabric scissors, and get cutting on those pieces. Once you have these cut out, you're also going to need 1 more piece of fabric. So there's my 4 layers. I'm just going to put them aside for now. So as I said, 20 inches in length by 8 inches in width. So once you have those pieces ready, then you just need to cut an extra piece. This is for the elastic at the back of the turban. So this extra piece of fabric is cut to the following measurements. It's 10 inches length by 5.5 inches in width. Okay, so that's 10 inches in length by 5.5 inches in width. So once you have that extra piece of fabric, put that aside, and you're also going to need to source some elastic. Now, it's pretty easy to get this elastic in most haberdashery shops. You will need to get a 1.5 inch width black or white elastic depending on your fabric, and then you need to cut the length to 5 inches. So once you have those pieces ready, we can go ahead and start preparing our fabric for the sewing machine. So I'm going to take 2 layers of my fabric that I've already cut. And because this fabric that I chose has a print on it, it's pretty easy for me to know which is the right side and which is the wrong side, so to speak. So the right side is the printed side. So you need to make sure that your 2 layers, take just 2 layers for the moment, and you need to make sure that your right sides are facing in towards each other, okay? The right side is the printed side on this particular example that I have here. Not so easy to tell sometimes on the plain fabrics. So now that we have our 2 pieces lined up face to face in the printed side inside, the next step is to move these 2 pieces onto the sewing machine. What we're going to do next is start to sew along the length, okay, on both sides, just from here to here and here to here. I usually use a 1 centimeter seam allowance on the machine, but it's whatever you feel comfortable with. Just make sure that the fabric doesn't move and keep everything edge to edge. You can use pins to help you with that, or I think I have a few little pegs here, which, sometimes I use just to hold my fabric in place like that. So I'm just going to grab 1 or 2 of those. Yeah, and I'm just going to move this onto the machine. I'm going to start sewing on this side first, and then I'm going to move over and do this side on the machine. So you also have to do that on your other 2 pieces of fabric as well. Okay, and that's the next step. Well, I'm back from my sewing machine, and as you can see, I have attached my fabrics along the edges here on both sides. I've done that for this one as well. Okay, so now we're ready for the next step in the process. So just make sure that your seams are along the edge here and not in the center. So once you have it like that, what you're going to do is just turn them out. Okay, so I'm taking this piece and I've turned it out. I'm going to do the very same with this one now as well. And the next step is to actually make our twist for our headband. So I'm just going to lay that down flat on the desk like that. And as I said, just make sure your seams are here on both sides, okay? Not in the center. So I've laid that piece out and I'm going to take my other piece of fabric and lay it vertically on top of that. Now I'm going to take the edges of the horizontal piece and this side as well, and I'm going to just attach the edges together. So if you have pins handy or little pegs, they'll do the job. I'm just going to grab a couple here and attach those pieces of fabric together, those edges, like so. So that's one done, and now I'm just going to do the very same for this and attach the edges here as well. Now once you have that done, you'll already see that the twist is taking shape for your headband. And I'm just going to attach the last peg there. So as you can see there, it's starting to take shape. Now, once you have this done, we're just going to move on to our next stage. So I'm just going to pop that over here for a minute. So the next step in this process is to take our extra piece of fabric and our elastic, and what we're going to do now is create the elastic backing for our turban. So we just place the fabric on the desk like this, and we take our elastic and we place it in the center, and we just fold our fabric over the elastic like that. Now you'll be able to feel where the edge of the elastic is, and to help with the next step, we're just going to place some pins close to the edge of that elastic, because what we're going to be doing is we're going to be sewing along here, along the edge of the elastic. Now, close to the edge of the elastic, I should say, because you don't want to sew into the elastic at all. So I'm just going to place a couple of pins just to help me with my next step on the sewing machine, so I know what line I'm sewing along. And I'll be able to feel the elastic anyway as I'm sewing this piece of fabric together, okay? So we're just going to take it now to the machine and we're just going to sew along here, all the way along the edge, close to our elastic, okay? So I'm going to take this to the machine now and I'll see you back here in a few minutes. So I'm just back from my sewing machine and we're ready for the next step. And as you can see, I've created the tubing which is going to house the elastic here. And what I also did was I cut away the excess fabric along the side, because we just don't want that extra bulk, you know, in our tubing, because that's where our elastic has to go. So in order to turn this out the right way, probably the handiest thing to use is a large safety pin like this, and what we're going to do is just insert that safety pin into the edge of our fabric like that. And now I'm just going to turn that into the tubing like that, and I'm just going to feed it along the inside like so, and that just helps to turn it the right side out. I mean, you could use a bodkin for this, but I just find a safety pin is just as good as anything else really. So just going to make sure that all comes out, which it did. And as you can see, there is our seam, and our seam must be placed in the center for the next step anyway, okay? So I'm just going to take that safety pin off, and lay that down for a second. We're going to grab our elastic next. So I'm just going to take the safety pin here, and just a large one. A large one actually makes it a little bit easier. And I'm going to take the tubing we created, and I'm now going to feed my elastic through that tube of fabric. Now this part of the process can be a little tricky, and but just, you know, take your time and make sure that you get all that elastic in there. But I mean, for the sake of this video, I may need to fast forward through this part. But no, I mean, it seems to be sliding in there, no problem. So what I'm just going to do on this end is secure that. I notice as well my seam has actually twisted a little bit. I want that dead center there. I've got my elastic here on the edge of the fabric, as you can see. So what I'm going to do is just take a safety pin, and I'm just going to secure that in place like that. Okay, then turn it back to the other side and continue to feed the elastic through this tubing like this. As I said, it can be tricky sometimes. There's not a lot of space to get the elastic through. And I may need to fast forward, but you know what to do. You can continue on. But I think I'm here now anyway at the end of this process. So I see my elastic coming out. Just that last bit of fabric, a bit stubborn. But there it is. Now I'm going to take the safety pin out, and I'm also going to pin this part in place as well. So I'm just going to grab a safety pin. I might grab us one smaller actually. Make sure that seam is in the center. It will twist on you. Okay, so there we have it. You know, you can just play around with the ruching on that and just even it out ever so slightly to where it needs to be, you know. But what we're going to do now is take this to the sewing machine. I see some excess thread coming off the elastic. I'm just going to trim that away. But the next step now is just to bring this to the sewing machine and sew along this edge and also along this edge. So I'm going to bring that to the sewing machine now, and I'll meet you back here and you'll be able to see what I just did. So here's my piece, and what I did was I just sewed along the edge on both sides to secure the elastic to the fabric, and this is how it's looking. So my seam is in the center there, like it should be. Okay, and the next step then is to take our larger pieces of fabric, and we take one side where we attached these grips to it earlier on. So what we need to do now is take our elastic backing, and with the seam, actually I'm just going to get rid of those excess threads because they're a bit of a distraction. Now we take our elastic backing and we place it in the center of this end of the fabric here. And what we have to do is, I'm just going to remove that grip, and I'm going to tuck in my fabric here on that side, and then I'm going to take my other end of the fabric and tuck it in nice and secure around like that. Okay, so will I show again? Maybe I should show again. Okay, so there's my elastic. I've taken the fabric that we made earlier on, and remember we attached these two ends together like that? So we just take these now and we actually might set it on the desk, make life a little easier. So there you go. And then we just take our elastic piece, place it in the center with the seam facing up. We take this corner and we tuck that in over the elastic like so. Then we take this side and we do the same. We tuck that in around the elastic like that. Okay. And I've seem to have a little bit of extra fabric here, so I'm just going to tuck that in like that. So now we need to sew along here. Now, because we've got so many layers of fabric, we need to maybe sew 3 or 4 times across. So over back, maybe 3 times, just to hold everything in place, because that's quite a lot of fabric and elastic. We want to make sure everything is secure. So I'm going to take this to the machine now and I'll meet you back here. Okay, so I am back from the sewing machine, and as you can see, I sewed along here to secure everything, and I went over it about 3 or 4 times. But what I found, even for myself, the machine, it's, you know, this is a lot of fabric for the machine to take. It's very tough. So if you find that it's difficult to feed that fabric through your sewing machine, just hand stitch it. And I would just use a really strong needle, like a darning needle, and a thimble to save your fingers, and just hand sew that together along there, maybe 3 or 4 times up and back, and that will secure everything in place for you. Okay, so now that we've done that side, we need to find our elastic and just bring it through to the other side of our headband, where we have attached the fabric earlier on, where we had attached the fabric earlier on. And again, I'm just going to remove these clips that are holding everything in place, and I'm just going to take the elastic and place it again in the center like we did before, and then just take those 2 sides and tuck them. Make sure they're actually edge to edge like that. Our seams should all be lined up like that. Then you take the elastic and you bring that into the center. You tuck in the fabric around the elastic like that, and you repeat that process for the other side, making sure that all the fabric is tucked in nice and secure like that. Then you can grab your safety pin again and just insert that through all of the layers, holding everything in place. And as I said, you can bring that to the sewing machine 3 or 4 times over and back just to secure everything. But I'm actually going to hand stitch that myself using a very strong darning needle with a double thread and my trusty thimble, and to protect my fingers. And then I'm just going to sew over and back hand stitching, and that will secure everything. So I'm going to do that now, and I'm just going to start sewing here like that, making sure all my layers are together. Nothing is going to escape. And just keep sewing until you feel like it's really secure. And like I said before, you can use old garments that have, you know, that you might have that you haven't thrown away because you really like the fabric, but you may never wear them again. So this would be a great way to upcycle that fabric into a really nice headband. And of course, you can embellish these with whatever you want. You could put pearls on them, bit of lace. You had some lace, bits of jewellery, a brooch, a few buttons, vintage buttons might be cute. You got some retro fabric as well that you could use that. Velvets for a luxurious headband, or some sequins for a bit of glamour. Okay, so I think that is secure enough. I've used a double thread as well. I'm pretty happy with that. I think that's really secure now at this stage. So I'm now going to remove my safety pin. And just knot that off. Okay, so that edge is now secure and sewn. So we take our headband, as you can see, there's the two edges that were sewn. And we just take our headband now and we can just turn it out. And when we turn it out like this, you can see that all of your stitches are hidden, cannot be seen. Isn't that nice? And then on the other side as well, cannot be seen. And on this side then we have our lovely twisted effect headband, and you can actually adjust this fabric to be a kind of a wide fit on the head if you like. You can make it as wide as you like, or as narrow as you like, but you can also play around with the dimensions when you get comfortable, and you might know yourself, your own personal preference, what size you want to make this to be worn. But that is it. That is our finished headpiece. And I hope that you found the instructions helpful and clear, and that you got your piece made. And best of luck with making. And I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and thank you for watching.